one day when I was leaving the gym, I was venting to another mom because it had been a rough morning. And she told me about a school. And there was something about the way she described it that caught my attention. So I shuffled my kids to the car, buckled them in their car seats, flipped on the DVD player. And before I left the parking lot, I called the school. And this lady answered the phone. So I scheduled a tour. Long story short, fast forward, that was over, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. We enrolled our kids in the school. We hadn't planned for it. We had moved to the area we moved to, Blue Valley at the time, to go to public school because the schools were so good. But this environment wasn't like any school I had ever experienced. It looked more like a children's museum. And so the environment alone caught my attention on the tour. But then when the lady, the owner of the school, the principal, who's now one of my dearest friends, as she was just describing the philosophy, it was just not like anything I had ever experienced. If I had to put it in 2 words, it was very entrepreneur-based education.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Kori Bloom. Kori is a keynote speaker, author, and leadership coach. She has more than 2 decades of experience across business, education, and leadership development. She is the author of the book, The Business of Parenting, Whole Person Leadership for Home, Work, and Everything in Between. You can learn more about Kori at koribloom.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Kori.
Kori, welcome to the Corporate Couch this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, no, this is a great. Our mutual friend, Brad Douglas, introduced us a while back. And then you just published your first book a month ago. We're recording here in March 2026. So excited to talk about that. What I've learned with over 250 podcast interviews is no one's career journey is a straight line. And I think you'll be a good example of that, as well as my career also. But let's. I know you're pretty active out there on your socials, and you're you love to meet people and connect. But even people that know you fairly well, Kori, what would surprise them about you?
I would say, the book kind of reveals that, but the most important leadership lesson of my life happened when I became a parent. So, and it came from a preschool that we found when my kids were little. So, people hear me they know I talk about parenting, but I don't know if they would know that specifically. That's the newer revelation.
Yeah. So where did you grow up, and what was fun for you growing up? What did you love doing?
I grew up in Kentucky, but I've been in Kansas City now almost 20 years. So I've been here a long time. My kids were both born here. Growing up, I have an art background. So I painted. I haven't painted in years, but I've done murals, and I have taken art classes that's what I did when I was little. So ceramics, and then I taught art in high school right out of college.
Oh, nice. So even during COVID, I know a lot of people kind of started painting in COVID because, the lockdown and all that. So, but you didn't explore your skills in it during that time, I guess.
No, because my kids were home and I was homeschooling them.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, that minor little detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you wrote in your book that, you always wanted to be a mom, but did you, which is obviously, that's the most important job in the world to raise productive, kind, and generous adults. But did you have any other aspirations? Like, hey, when I'm an adult, I'm going to do this.
I think since I was a kid, I've always been creative. I've always felt this urge or need to want to help other people. And it's evolved over time and come out in different ways, but obviously now that's become very clear on how I can do that. But I've just always had this urge to share from any experience that maybe was challenging for me in hopes that it might help someone else get through that moment. So I've always had that, and I always wanted to write a book, but I didn't like to read. And I always thought that was so funny that I had this urge to write a book. I would buy, back then we didn't have audiobooks, so I would buy books that I wanted to read and it was always not, nonfiction, self-help books, even when I was young. But they would just sit there because I just struggled with reading. And turns out my son's dyslexic and has has been diagnosed with ADHD. And so in going through that process with him, I'm pretty much the same.
Right. It's so interesting. I've interviewed a fair amount of dyslexic people, and it's this, the same stories and how they love, they love audiobooks, which makes total sense.
Right.
But all high achievers and have done great things. So that's so interesting. So you're 18, you graduate high school. What was your thought process on what's next in my life?
Well, so I went to Kentucky. I went to the University of Kentucky. I majored, funny, I really didn't know. I didn't declare my major till my junior year. And I ended up going into education. So my degree is, my bachelor's in education. And I came out of school and taught high school art, did that for a few years in a public school system. I didn't feel like I could grow in that environment. I didn't love the politics of the traditional education system. And it felt like there was a ceiling. Like, where do I go from here? And, and I was a new teacher with all the big ideas, doing all the crazy things. I literally stood, because I was so young and teaching high school, I stood on the tables in the art room and walked from table to table just to kind of disrupt the normal pattern of what kids expected from a teacher and to try to capture their attention in a different way. I don't know what made me think of that, but I just did it and it worked.
Wow.
But yeah, so from there,
I'm sure your principal loved that.
yeah. When I was I did it in my student teaching too. And fortunately, the teacher embraced it. She went with, she thought it was great.
No, I love it. I mean, art is supposed to be creative, right? What was the craziest kind of either student experience you had or a parent during a parent-teacher conference in your years of teaching?
Well, what I found, so I don't know if this is the craziest, but what frustrated me is there's kids, they have IEPs, they have individual education plans, and a classroom teacher has to sit in on those meetings. I found myself as a new teacher and a young teacher that was, I didn't have kids at the time. I wasn't married. So I had time that I would get roped into going to those meetings, but I didn't teach those kids. They were putting me in the spot because they had to have a classroom teacher there, but I wasn't really having anything. I didn't have anything to say about the student because I didn't know the student. So that it just didn't seem logical. So that kind of stuff really frustrated me. And just I remember one time, I think I drove a student home, and you're not supposed to do that, but I was, again, just wanting to help. And then the craziest thing I did was decided in the art room, we did chicken wire sculptures. And I brought some of the college projects, back to the classroom in the high school. And I thought, let's do these things now. And we built life-size sculptures, but I didn't think that through with 36 kids in one class.
Oh, wow.
So They were all over the school, but it was really cool. And I learned, it was failure, but it wasn't, it was, the kids loved it. It was different. It was out of the box. It was something they hadn't done. And we just embraced it. But I learned we might need to scale it back the next year.
Yeah. At some point, you finally get frustrated enough to move on. Kind of what was your thinking process and where'd you go after teaching?
So while I was teaching, because I made no money, I was waiting tables, which I had done all through college. And then my dad actually owns a furniture store. And at the time, the store was getting into in home design. So, long story short, I ended up leaving education and going to work for him full time. So, I worked for that company, his company, and I sold retail. Then I became a buyer for the store, a merchandiser for the store. We went from one store to four stores in the time I was there. And then from that, I was recruited by the corporation to go be an independent contractor for the company. So I moved from Kentucky to Ohio. So I was in the second largest territory at the time in the company, working with two other gentlemen, and we covered that whole territory. We had Cincinnati, Dayton, and Columbus. And so I did that, which was an amazing experience. And again, I always gravitated. I did a lot of the product training, even back then. So teacher, trainer back
Yeah.
then. And then from there, I ended up getting married, had kids. My husband at the time, I'm not married anymore, but my husband at the time worked for the same company. The economy was, this was the early 2000s. Our son was born in 2008, was not what, the economy wasn't great. And he's like, you need to get a job with benefits. So kind of pushed me out of that industry. I went into pharmaceuticals for a few years, not my jam, but it was a great job. I was grateful for it at that time. And then there was a huge layoff in the company when I was pregnant with my daughter. So I was laid off when I had an 18-month-old and I was pregnant. And so then I was able to stay home 5 years, that was the turning point. That was when that was literally, I was entering into the most difficult job I've ever had, being a parent.
Right. Yeah. I mean, talk about that. Obviously that you were maybe pushed in that direction because of the layoff, but still, universe or God, whatever you believe in, I think, in my opinion, puts you in the place you need to be. But talk about full-time parent and, the impact that had on you. And did it ever kind of like, did you ever say, oh my God, I wish I can be this again, in a corporate world? So talk about your experience for those.
So literally it was eye-opening because I had worked for really challenging people. I had a very interesting experience when I left my family's business and went on the corporate side. I worked for a very challenging person and I learned so much to the point that I have a file right behind us in my file cabinet that I've saved to this day because it was hard, but it taught me so much. So I had dealt with that. I had done trainings with groups full of people, but leading this at the time when it became the hardest, my kids were 2 and 4. And I felt about as far away from a leader as I could have ever imagined. I wanted to be with my kids. I really never had the urge to go back. I was grateful to be home with them. I wasn't even upset about the layoff at the time. My heart was home with them. They were my priority. But I felt like I sucked at it. I was like, I am failing and this is awful. I felt out of control. I felt overwhelmed. I did not feel in charge of myself. And I'd never felt that way before. And so we started seeking help from child psychologists. I bought more books that I didn't read, more parenting books. And I just became more overwhelmed because I would ask other parents and everybody has their own philosophy. And to this day, I get triggered when I hear parenting philosophy because what happened, this is the divine moment, was when I was venting to another mom. I would take my kids to the gym. This was my saving grace at the time. I would take my kids to the gym every day. So it created some healthy habits, but we would go for 2 hours because there was 2 hours of free childcare and my kids had fun. I got a break. And one day when I was leaving the gym, I was venting to another mom because it had been a rough morning. And she told me about a school. And there was something about the way she described it that caught my attention. And again, I was desperate. So I'm like, okay. So I shuffled my kids to the car, buckled them in their car seats, flipped on the DVD player. And before I left the parking lot, I called the school. And this lady answered the phone. So I scheduled a tour. Long story short, fast forward, that was over, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. We enrolled our kids in the school. We hadn't planned for it. We had moved to the area we moved to, Blue Valley at the time, to go to, public school because the schools were so good. But this environment wasn't like any school I had ever experienced. It looked more like a children's museum. And so the environment alone caught my attention on the tour. But then when the lady, the owner of the school, the principal, who's now one of my dearest friends, as she was just describing the philosophy, it was just not like anything I had ever experienced. It was very, if I had to put it in 2 words, it was very entrepreneur-based education. The teacher wasn't in traditional education. The teacher was at the front of the classroom dictating, telling you what to think, shoving the information in. Teachers in this environment, which I began to really understand, I taught there 6 years. So we enrolled the kids, I volunteered, I became very curious, and it just naturally happened. The school was growing, she needed more teachers, and I went back to teaching. So yeah, so I got to experience and see firsthand. And what came from that was understanding. I found the school looking for something to fix my child, to make him easier. And I say that because I have, kids are different. I have 2, but I have one that's a little more strong-willed and a bit more of a challenge, even to this day. But it's all the things that make him amazing. It is all the things that will make him a brilliant entrepreneur someday, but it makes him a pain in the ass to parent. But I don't want to suppress that good in him. I want to bring it out in a positive way. So when I was seeking the school, I was seeking to fix. And then what I found in the school was it was less about him and more about me. And I was giving my power away to these little people. So it became more about self-leadership. So that's why I say now the most important leadership lesson of my life didn't come in a business environment or a boardroom. It happened in a preschool.
You can share the name of the school. I know they did a little research and it's in your book, but and I should pronounce it correctly because I'm Italian, but I don't speak Italian. But the Reggio Emilia.
Reggio Emilia.
Amelia, yes. So that talk about that philosophy, because that's what that school embraced. I did a little research on it, and it's named for the town the founder was from. So talk about the school name and the philosophy and why it's so different.
It's like I said, it's very entrepreneur based. It's child centered. Children they are viewed as capable. Brie, the owner, the school's called Bambini Create TV. It started as a preschool. But once we found it, we're like, we're not leaving. We want our kids to be in this environment. So my kids were the first kids. They were kind of the guinea pigs. And she kept rolling up and adding a grade every year. A couple things. Collaboration is welcomed. There's no grades like traditional grades. All of the motivation is meant to come. We're meant to help the kids become intrinsically motivated. The social emotional development of the child is as of equal importance to the cognitive development of the child. Because what you often find is kids that are high functioning, like they're really smart, they're missing some social skills. And the kids that have all the social skills are missing some of the academic stuff. So there's this gap. And what happens in traditional environments is often we separate those 2 people, when actually the best thing to do is to bring them together because they can help each other. So that is what we did in that environment. If a child came to you and brought a roll of tape to the teacher and they'll say, Miss Kori, help me with the tape. If they're like, and this actually happened when I was teaching, I started there teaching 2-year-olds. So I went from high school to 2-year-olds, and I had never done that. We look at the child, and the easy fix, right? The quick solution is just to rip off a piece of tape and hand it to the child. But in this environment, that looks different. We coach the child on seeking the help from another child that has slightly more skills than they do. So they're in that zone of proximity for learning. And by doing that child's confidence grows because they're learning to advocate for the need for something they don't have, which will transfer to amazing things later in life. And I get to witness that in my kids because my kids are 15 and 17 now, and they were 2 and 4 when they started there. And the other thing that happens is the child that's teaching the skill, even though the tape might be all stuck together and crinkly, They are growing in their confidence because what's the mastery of learning? It's teaching. So both kids are growing in confidence. And eventually that younger child becomes the teacher. In this environment, just like in any work environment, we don't work in a marketing firm and know how to do everything in the marketing firm. I don't do speaking and want to do my bookkeeping. I hire somebody that's better at that than me because I'm not meant to be good at everything. I want to put my energy on what I'm good at, and I want to know how to seek the resources and find the people that can help me with the things I'm not. And that's just efficient. And that's what this environment does. We teach kids to go find support where they need it, and we highlight what they're amazing at. So now the other kids know if they need help in that area where they go. So it functions very much like a business. I could talk
Yeah,
about
no,
that for hours, but I'm like, how much time do you have?
yeah, there you go. One thing that struck me from the book, which is called The Business of Parenting, you talk about schools operate like factories, traditional schools. And I love that because I love it in the sense that it's so accurate. I don't love it that schools operate like factories. And because the public school system was built around the manufacturing industrial,
Yep.
complex post World War II, they wanted to train kids to be compliant, to work in factories. You didn't want creativity, you wanted compliance. And the whole post World War II, even the housing market, the governments and the banks, wanted people to stay in towns and homes so there would be a constant stream of workers for the factories. That's why a lot of young men, or boys, I should say, sometimes they don't do well at school because they want to play, or, females could be the same way. But I mean, they want to be creative. They want to run around, and they should be able to run around because that's what they
Right.
do. But I'd love your thoughts on it.
No, 100%. Education hasn't evolved with everything else in the world. I mean, look at our phones, how much they've evolved, our computers. Education pretty much looks the same as when my dad went to school, and he's 79. And we're doing kids a disservice. And it's actually we need to revamp education. And that is probably my biggest passion. And I see the connection to the business world because you see business leaders trying to hire people, and kids don't have and I'm not saying all kids, but a good portion of kids no longer have critical thinking skills. And people say, well, my schools were like that and I turned out fine. Yes, but the world is not the same as when we grew up in it. We have technology now, and that is changing things. So now more than ever, the environment that kids spend the majority of time in needs to change to help support them in this fast-paced changing world.
Right.
And critical thinking is the biggest thing that's missing. And parents unknowingly too are oversaving and overprotecting kids. So they're missing coping. What we had the traditional environment, but we didn't have the devices distracting us and taking our attention. We went outside and played and got hurt. Our parents didn't overprotect us. Like, I was a latchkey kid. I would have to go home, make my own food. And, we had to kind of fend for ourselves. We'd go play outside till it was dark. We weren't micromanaged like kids are today. So not only are the schools not giving them the critical thinking and problem solving opportunities and opportunities for healthy failure while they're in our homes and safe and protected, schools aren't giving them that either. Schools shame, they judge, they don't want kids questioning. Failure is perceived as bad, which failure is what's needed to learn anything new. If we never tried something and failed at it, we'd never learn anything. We're not doing anything important. So, so I 100%, that needs to change. And we need to get some of the technology even out of the schools, because kids need that. Boys need the rough and tumble play. And we allowed that. Like, we had a nature play yard at that school. It didn't look like a traditional play yard. The kids, it was all weather. If it was raining, we were outside. If it was snowing, we were outside. We told the parents, don't send them to school in clothes you care about, because this environment is meant to teach them. Kids learn the most with play. This is no different. Adults learn the most. The things we remember, either it was really hard and we failed, or we had fun. Right. If you tie an emotion to learning, whether it's in a work environment, in a school, or in your home, you're going to remember it because it's tied to that emotion. So that's why kids need play-based learning. And the other thing in the school that's very different is materials are very open-ended. They're not clearly defined. It's very colorful and bright, not just primary colors, because it's meant to provoke that curiosity. And if a child sees a material, it's not the teacher saying, these are the materials we're going to use. It's the teacher saying, this is the project we have. What do you think we need to complete the project? Again, now they have to critically think and they have to look around their environment and decide, what do I need to do this project? And so, yes. And then all of these skills, I began to see what happened was truly, I started teaching parenting classes because I'm like, other parents need to understand this. And some of the dads in my classes were like, can you come help me with my employees? Because the same skills we need to lead little people are the same leadership skills we need to lead big people. And it starts with leading ourselves.
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts, he creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
Talk a little bit more about, I think you call in your book, the parenting pendulum swing.
Yeah.
So how, kind of, like, at least for me, if I got 5 A's and a C, it wasn't about the 5 A's. Why'd you get a C in this? Well, I don't like the teacher. I don't, whatever it is, I'm not good at,
Right.
Whatever the subject is, I'm not interested. There's a lot of things, and I love the analogy. We just played and we were gone morning through evening, and then you get the shit kicked out of you by a friend. No one knows. So you get home,
Right.
type thing. We're now we arrest the kid that beat me up, type thing. But anyhow, talk about the swing and
yes,
your thoughts on it.
And because I started to touch on it. So I've had this theory, and I came up with this literally while standing in front of a bunch of parents. It just kind of popped in my head. We were raised in the generation of children should be seen and not heard, do as I say, suppressed emotion, don't be mad, don't cry, toughen up. So feelings don't matter, which wasn't necessarily good, but there was some good. Like I said, we have grit. We are resourceful. We critically think because we had to. If we were hungry, we had to go find a hose to drink out of. If we got stuck on top of a big rock, which actually happened to me, we had to figure out from our friends how to get down. I think once the fire department did have to get me out of a tree. But right, like we learned, that was scary. Don't do that again. Well, now those adults are raising kids. And as parents, I would say 90% of parents, I don't like saying there's good and bad parents, but most parents want what's best for their kids. So whether they're doing the right thing or not intentionally, they want what's best for their kids. So now parents, because they have this suppressed emotion and things they've never dealt with, the pendulum has swung too far over here and they're overprotecting, they're saving, they're calling the teacher and believing everything their child tells them and save. And it's really screwed up society as far as like teachers being able to feel like there's a lot of missing skills because of it. Yeah. But the bottom line is they're overprotecting and saving. We're taking them their lunches. We're buying them a new coat when they lose it. There's no suffering happening. And kids need a little bit of suffering to learn coping because the world is not fair. I'm grateful my kids had that environment because they got some of the skills and tools that a lot of kids are missing. So I am forever grateful for that. But what needs to happen is we need to find middle ground. A lot of what our parents did, being resourceful, having grit, those things were great. The suppressed emotion, not so great. That's why parents are oversaving, because they have undealt with trauma. We are a product of our environment, whether we like it or not. And when we have kids, we go on autopilot. We start parenting just based on what we know, based on how we were parented. And it took me reflecting on that. Oh, wait, why am I feeling this way? When my child calls me a butthead in Target, I'm feeling like everybody's looking at me thinking
Right.
I'm a bad mom. So I'm making it about me. Therefore, I'm not behaving like the leader I need to be to coach my child on how to change the behavior, because I'm too focused on what it means about me. When I'm leaving Costco, I tell that story in the book with a kid literally under each arm screaming, and I'm kicking the cart. I mean, I am mortified. I'm sweating. I want to cry. I'm like, why is this happening to me? But it wasn't. I was allowing it. I was missing the leadership skills and the tools required, which start with self-awareness and composure. And whatever we give our attention to in this world, we get more of. So I have 6 threads, as you saw in the book, that I really believe are just fundamental to leading and raising humans. And again, whether it's in a workplace or in my home, emotions, I love this saying, emotions should not be dictators, or feelings should not be dictators. They should be indicators. So when we're feeling reactive in situations, it should be a signal to look at self and understand, well, what's going on for me right now? And we don't do that because we're trying to work. We're trying to run errands. We're trying to keep our house afloat. We're trying to manage the little people in it. We're trying to manage a business. We get so caught up in all the stuff, we sometimes forget how to really focus on what matters and be present in the now. So literally, when I started all of this, I wanted to come up with a name for it when I started the classes. So my LLC is Conscious Not Crazy.
Right.
Because I felt crazy, and I'm like, okay, I need to be
Right.
present. I need to be conscious before I
Yeah.
can lead anybody.
Right. So some of the names that get applied to today's parents, you get the helicopter parent that's hovering all the time, and then a new term came to my consciousness about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, snowplow parent that just clears every obstacle in the way for the child. I mean, those are the leaders you're coaching, right? In terms of their leadership at work, knowing that you have those type of personalities, how does it impact how you instruct them to get better into it?
Some of the things I think we miss, especially, and this is one of the things that I started coaching parents on, which transfers to the workplace, is we tend to, when something doesn't go our way, or somebody's late, or somebody doesn't have a project on time, or my child's drawing on the wall, whatever it is. So literally it could apply to any behavior that is not what we want to happen, which happens every day. Things happen every day that we don't want to happen.
Right.
So it's our job to, if we can approach everything with a sense of, I like to call it positive intent, assuming the best, and ask questions, because then we're removing all judgment. So I noticed you were late. I noticed the project. So tell me what's going on. Because sometimes we just don't have enough information. Information is power. So we either get information that somebody is just being, maybe they're not a good fit for our team and they're being careless and they're, not doing the work. People are going to be more open to share authentically if they're not afraid, if they don't go to the fight or flight. We have 3 parts of our brain. We have the cognitive processing center, we have the emotional state, and we have the fight or flight state. Our brains are designed to keep us alive. So in today's world, it's not necessarily it is keeping us alive in some circumstances, but in most days, it's just, we go to fight or flight if things don't go our way. So if we run into any kind of situation where things aren't going our way, if we can get back up here, and we can bring that person that's in that emotional state back up here by asking questions. Tell me more about that. I noticed judgment-free questions. For my parents, I say, get curious, not furious. I say those things with them because in the moment, that makes it easier to remember what to do. And I always say better, not perfect, because you're not going to do it perfect every time. You're going to catch yourself going to the old habit. because this whole process comes down to rewiring our own pre-programmed patterns in our own brain, which takes years. No different than going to the gym. With the first time you go to the gym, I mean, I started going to the gym, like I said, when my kids were 2 and 4. I still go. I've created the habit, but I didn't go one time and leave with muscles. I had to go over and over and over again. Same thing with the brain, changing the behavior, the reaction. It takes time and it takes consciousness to do that. But I think that's one of the things that I really saw transfer. It was funny. The first time I tried it on with an adult, one of the things we said at the school when the kids did something, is that hurtful or helpful? Because what we're doing is we're creating accountable people, accountable kids, because we're not telling them. We need to stop telling people what they're doing. People just shut down. When someone tells you, well, you're doing it wrong, they shut down. They're not learning. They're not coachable at that time. You're not a coach. You're not a leader. Kids are no different. But we would tell the kids, is that helpful or hurtful? And give them time to reflect. Now they can own their behavior. And they might say, it's helpful. And we'll say, no, that wasn't helpful. Tell me why. And we would coach them with an adult. So I did this one time when I was married. My ex-husband said something to me and I go, and it wasn't super kind. And I go, was that helpful or hurtful? And he just kind of looked at me because it caught him off guard. But it literally is the same thing. It's boundaries. It's holding people accountable. The only person we can control in this world is ourselves. And I think when most of us think of a leader, we picture a boardroom, a boss. There's a lot of leaders or people with leadership titles that aren't great leaders out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, besides this podcast, I help companies build culture through internal podcasts that are only their employees could listen to. But one of the advantages is it helps humanize senior leadership because you have a female CEO. Well, oh my God, you're a CEO or you're the CFO, you're the CMO, you're all the C-suite alphabet soup acronyms out there. And that means they never have problems. They have a perfect life. Their kids are perfect. They sleep 8 hours, no, they shit happens to them just like everybody else. So, you bring out authentic things, you talk about in your book, all the stuff that happened. You weren't a perfect parent. You didn't know what to do. You tried so many different things. And yeah, everybody's had that experience in the grocery store or Costco with, a child or children are going nuts and you're going, oh my God, people think I'm a bad parent.
Right.
I'm curious in terms of, it's not too much in your book and you can share or not share as much as you like here, but, I've gone through divorce. I had 2 young children at the time, but talk about the impact of the divorce on you and the influence on the book and your coaching style. Because I know you talk about parenting as a team and you can still do it while divorced, but I'm just curious how it impacted you.
Like I'm living and breathing what I talk about, and it's constantly evolving and changing. And I think a couple things. One, no, I didn't want to get divorced. I wanted to stay married more than anything. But it came to a point in time where I can't make another person do anything. I can't change the other person. And he's a great dad. My ex-husband's an amazing dad. And we co-parent. It's been fine. Was it perfect, the process? No. But I'm grateful I had more skills by the time we got to that point to work with. Because like there was times, during divorce, people get yucky. They can say hurtful things. But instead of taking it personally, I'm not saying I was perfect, better not perfect. But there were moments where I was like, let it go. Let it go. He's upset. He's hurt. He's sad. We're all trying to figure out this new dynamic. And the one biggest mistake, and the one thing I'm grateful that I did know, and I have a whole podcast myself on this one, is the biggest mistake people do in divorce is they talk poorly about the other parent. It's like they want to get the kids on their side or to align with them, but your child is half you and half them. And the only relationship you're hurting by talking poorly about the other parent is your own. And I'm a child of divorce as well. So I've experienced that in that, I mean, it from that perspective, but it doesn't serve the parent that says anything negative. If I hear my kids, because, kids, I have teenagers, and kids will try to manipulate. And if I hear my kids, like my son, I held him accountable for something recently, and he was not happy and he was being disrespectful. So I unplugged his video game, and he knows I'm going to follow through on it. He's in fight or flight. So he's going to, as we say, push our buttons. But can someone push our buttons if we don't allow it? No.
Totally. Right.
We're choosing to allow it. So he's going to dig. And in the middle of the divorce, he did this. Literally, Dad had just moved out like 5 days before, and he was trying to push my buttons, and he dug deep. He goes, well, I hate you. I'm just going to go live with Dad, And I looked at him and I said, I love you. Okay. If you want to go see your dad. I wanted them to know, even though Dad and I aren't married, we are aligned. And if you want to go be with Dad, go be with Dad. And I trust that their dad, like, we talk to each other all the time. We're not going to allow the kids to manipulate.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, go be with Dad. We're not going to use going to see Dad or going to see Mom as a tool to control. Yeah. And kids will try anything. The goal is understanding. I love using the iceberg theory. The tip of the iceberg with any person is the behavior we see. It's what below it that matters most. That drives the behavior. And so when I see outrageous behavior with an adult, a child, anyone, I immediately have trained my brain to think, I wonder what's really going on. Yeah. And again, I become curious. So I ask questions, or I approach it assuming the best to gather more information. So now I know, what problem am I really solving here? So information. We just need more information and less judgment.
Right.
I don't know if that helped answer that question.
No, I love it. I mean, I think if you're together as a married couple, kids are going to manipulate you when you're in the same household. So it's just exponentially harder if you're not aligned, when you're living in different households, and they can play one off the other, which again they'll do even if you live in the same household as husband and wife. But
and that's a whole nother challenge. You've got two people in a house from different backgrounds, right? My whole book starts on values and alignment. I think one of the things you need to do it in a business. You need to know your mission. You need to know your why. In your home, you need to know your values, because that needs to drive and be the lens which you view all decisions. So like, if our household values kindness, was that kind? If we value, whatever the values are, everyone's values can be different. So we literally have a dry erase board in my kitchen, and the kids have values on there. I have values on there. We all have added to it. Yeah. And I think that's the other piece in work environments. If you make your employees feel cared for and included, that doesn't mean they get to dictate how you want to run your business, but getting more buy-in, people will hold themselves more accountable if they felt like they were part of that decision or that choice, or they had some voice in that. And homes are the same.
Yeah. And I loved your take on, it's one thing to have values, but you have to model them. It's not the talk. The words mean nothing. It's, kids watch what you do. So talk a little bit more about that.
100%. When things aren't going well in my home, because it's never too late to reset and go back. I'm constantly like, we're doing good. We're on a roll. Oh, nope, shit hit the fan. So now I got to realign. So usually when things get a little off, I'm probably not living the values that I say that I care about. So again, I go back to self. I always go look myself in the mirror. And I don't expect perfect. Again, 80-20. I love saying this, just try to be better than yesterday. And I'm only in competition with myself. We live in this world of comparison and social media. And per your point earlier, just because it looks perfect doesn't mean it is. And that's why assuming things about people isn't helpful, because we never really know. I mean, maybe they have a dying parent. Maybe they have a sick child. Maybe they're going through a divorce. I've experienced things that I wish I could share more to be helpful to people, but we never know what someone's really been through or experienced. We never truly know. So having some empathy and understanding. But the key is knowing what you value and living it and living in alignment with that. Because you can say all day long, don't drive and text to your kid. But if they see you doing it, and I'm guilty, I've done it. Yeah. I need to not do that. And I acknowledge it. I acknowledge when I fail in front of them because I value that. And I'm like, okay, I'll do better. I will do better. It's okay. I'm not apologizing for being the parent because I'm the leader in my home, but I will apologize when I make a mistake. Like, I need to do better. You need to do better, but I need to do better too. I didn't handle that well. And my kids know that. It's like we can fail and it's how we recover that matters. I share, this whole journey of writing the book because my kids are like, what are you doing? What are you working on? I had to read to them what I wrote about them in the book to make sure they were okay with it. Again, so they feel included and part of that process. But 100%, if my kids are watching, if I hold the door for someone, if I'm kind to somebody at a restaurant, if they mess something up, I'm aware of every interaction. Somebody flicks me off in trap. That happened the other day. Somebody gave me the finger and I laughed.
Yeah, but you cut me off. You cut me off, Kori. That's right.
And maybe I did, but maybe it was an accident. In this situation, it was really funny because I didn't do anything and it was a parking spot issue. And my daughter was like, oh, Mom. And I go, yeah, I look at people like that. I don't get mad. I don't get triggered. I think, gosh, that's really sad. It's so sad to me that person's so miserable that made them that upset. But I don't get reactive. I don't give it power. Hearing that when I was parent, when my kids were little, when someone once told me, you're giving your power away, I thought, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I've been dealing with a contractor issue recently. I won't even get started on that. But the contractor, God love him, I've tried. I've been so nice. I will be boundaried. I will give choices. But his business acumen, so bad. Like, so bad, so blamey, no accountability. And I'm like, dude, your business could be so much. You could, because he's just missing the tools. Like, if you can screw up, there's statistics on this. If you have a perfect experience at a business, you're going to be a loyal customer. You're going to be happy. You're going to be satisfied. If the business screws up something and fixes it, I forget what the number is. I had it, but it was like 80% more satisfaction. Because what happened? What happened when they screwed up and fixed it?
Yeah.
We trust them now. We trust them. So I'm a more loyal customer and they screwed something up. But because I know because mistakes are going to happen and our biggest fear is, are they going to handle it? How are they going to handle it? And by head on just handling it and fixing it, we like them more. We don't care that it wasn't perfect. We're more satisfied than the perfect experience, which I find so interesting.
Yeah. So I was going to wait and ask you this question, but you brought it up in terms of, I always like to ask first-time authors, what was your writing process? What was that like for you?
For lack of I don't have a more elegant term, verbal vomit. Kind of how my brain works. I said, if you got inside my head, so my biggest challenge, and we kind of talked about this even before we got on the call or got on the podcast, my brain, if you got inside of it, is like a whole bunch of squirrels running around. There are so many things I want to do. There are so many ideas I have, and I love being creative, and it's really hard for me to focus. And so the book, The One Thing, helped me. I have a good friend recommended that. And like, what's the one thing I've got to focus? And so I hyper-focus. I literally hyper-focus because I remember Brad goes, you wrote it, you finished it. And it's not a long book. Right. It's a kind of book that I would read because I do audiobooks. And my dad's funny. My dad goes, I was able to read it because he doesn't like to read either. But I do audiobooks. I may have listened to hundreds of books. I love books, but they've got to be audio. Right. And so literally just unloading everything that was going on in my head, because it was really hard for me because I did this parenting thing. I'm an educator. I've worked in the business world. I have kids. And the book title came to me. I was sitting at a business conference. It was UBN. It was a Christian business networking event. And I'm looking at the people. They're talking about values because it was a Christian business networking event. And I'm thinking my dad's in my parenting class telling me managing my employees is like managing kids. I've had other friends that own businesses that they've said that over and over. And then I'm watching these people and I'm thinking they're talking about how employee retention is hard. And, I've even have a friend, my friend who owns the school, she's had teachers whose parents have called in for them, like 20-year-olds, and their
Right.
parents are calling it. And I'm like, that is insane to me. And so I was trying to make this connection between the parenting and the business. And I was sitting there and I go, the business of parenting, the business of parenting. And for me, the most difficult business I ever run was my home with my kids when I wasn't
Right.
working. And
Right.
it taught me the most and gave me gifts that I can take back to the business world. And so I started to see this connection. And then it was like, okay, how do I articulate this? Because I built a website. And then I'm like, okay, that's not done. So I built another website and I had a business section and a parenting section. And now I'm going to build a third website that's going to be all one section, because the lie we tell ourselves is our personal and professional lives are separate, and they're not. We are one
Right.
whole person in every room. And
Yeah.
that book was just me getting all the information out and then getting organization with it, which landed me on those 6 threads: alignment and value, or values and alignment, mindset, attention, communication, action, and growth and resilience. Those are the 6 things, whether I'm doing a parenting class or I'm talking to business leaders, everything flows from that, because we got to know who we are and what we stand for. We
Yeah.
have to be aware of our mindset. What stories are we
Yeah.
telling ourselves?
Yeah.
Our attention matters, because whatever we focus on grows. So if
Yeah.
things are happening that we don't like too often, what are we focused on? We sometimes to forget the good, to notice the good in our workplaces and in our homes. Because when it's good, we're like, oh, this is easy. This is cake. This is great. But if we don't acknowledge and reinforce it, it starts to disappear.
Yeah.
And so our attention matters. The words we say matter. Approaching with the curiosity, the questions. We have actual conversations. We have actual opportunities for coaching and learning, and we get more information. And then our actions matter, because what we do, as we said, matters as much or more really than what we say.
Yeah.
People are watching what you do, whether they're your kids. And I remember, I often go back and think of my childhood. What did I notice? What did I notice that I never told anyone? And it helps me kind of put my kids back, or put myself in my kids' shoes. And that's, I do a lot of, like, sometimes I'll meditate or sit and reflect on those things. And then the last is growth and resilience. The goal isn't perfection. It's just improvement.
So many different takes I have on what you just said. But the first is, you mentioned that the parent of the 20-year-old called in. So that reminded me, like, I think I started hearing it in the early days of COVID, that their adult children in the workplace, they'd be 22, 23. They would go, a parent would go to an interview with them, or if they got a bad review, like a job performance review, they would call the manager. I'm like, whoa.
Like, it's absurd. Oh my gosh.
I'm like, wow. But anyhow, there was another thought I had. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I can see progressive companies that really are concerned about the wellness of their employees almost hiring you not only as a business coach, but wouldn't it be great to talk about your parenting process and the mindset there, and you can kind of give both. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just
Well,
it would be phenomenal. So I don't know if that happens to you or not, but
well, and that's kind of where everyone told me to separate it. Like, they said,
Yeah.
well, you can't combine these 2 things. And it was funny. And even my marketing friend on the book title was like, that book title doesn't make sense. But for me, I'm like, it makes sense. And I didn't care if somebody walked by it in a store, like, oh, I got to buy that book. I wanted to communicate what I've learned in my message. And that felt authentic. And whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yes, so it's funny, when I did a keynote in October, and I shared my parenting stories, because those are the lessons. So it's the personal lesson, it's the personal experience, but it's also a professional lesson. So I don't think they're these two separate things. So I love it because I generally will, like, if it helps you become a better parent and better at home, and also your employees are parents, it's just this whole understanding that it's not, leadership isn't a switch you turn on at work and off at home. It's who we are and how we show up. So yeah, I love all of that. So being supportive to them in a personal development way or a professional development way. But I love, because in the book, every chapter I wrap it up with parenting as leadership. And this is why.
Right.
This is why these skills work the same way in any environment. They're needed in any environment.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. There's no work-life balance. It's just life, right? It's just.
Have you ever heard the juggling analogy? Life is like this. You have glass balls and rubber balls. And so there's some balls you can't drop because they'll break. And then there's some balls, like my house being clean would be a rubber ball. Okay, that's not high priority today.
Yeah.
And so nothing's going to totally fall apart or break if I drop that ball. It's just going to be messy and it's going to drive my OCD self crazy. So, and in the workplace, same thing. Caring for your people should be a glass ball. Because if people that feel cared for, and my dad taught me this, because he cares for his employees, he goes above and beyond for his employees. Now, if there's an employee that is disrupting the culture, he will fire that employee too, because that is harming all aspects of his culture. Even if it's his top salesperson, it doesn't matter, because when that person goes, the whole culture rises. So it's just understanding which balls are rubber, which balls are glass. There is no perfect balance. As one of my good friends said, balance is bullshit.
Balance. I love that. I love that. I read that glass ball analogy. It's in one of James Patterson's novels.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually used that in a talk. That exact analogy. Years ago. So that's, I love that. Kori, I love helping two groups of people on the podcast. So if you can recall when you stepped out of the hollowed halls of the University of Kentucky and you're going to begin your professional journey, if that, 22, 23-year-old self was sitting on the couch here with me, what advice would you have for her as she's beginning her professional and career journey?
Do it scared. Do it when you're not ready, and do it messy.
Yeah, love it.
For whatever reason, like I'm a recovering perfectionist, I'll do it when. I talked about this. I want to do it, but I don't know how. But what I have found on this journey is in the doing, in the messy action, that's when we learn how. And that process will never end. Like I will forever be learning and growing. And that I want to model that for my kids.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. The second group is everyone could be a leader at a company, but those that go from an individual contributor to managing a group of people for the first time and are responsible for a team. What advice do you have from that as they begin that leadership journey?
And I think that one, assume the best in people, see the best. Because whatever, like I said before, whatever we give attention to, we get more of. And that doesn't mean everybody's going to show up the best. But if you assume the best, you're giving them the best opportunity, and you're going to get better information to make clear decisions as opposed to reactive ones. We want to be responders, not reactors.
Right. Yeah. Kori, thanks so much for coming on the Corporate Couch. I love your book, The Business of Parenting, Whole Person Leadership for Homework and Everything in Between. Congratulations on the book, and thanks for coming on the Corporate Couch today.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Kori was just she was so fun to talk to. Such a different guest, I think, in terms of around 200 guests on the Corporate Couch. Just her different approach to her career and where she's at now. And I was always a firm believer, what you are at work is you should be at home, and vice versa. And, and she talks about, in her book and the subtitle, whole person leadership for homework and everything in between. And she talked about, parenting is a leadership. I think she called it a leadership lab. There's no off switch. There's no perfect playbook. Every situation's different. So you have to learn a whole, set of leadership skill set with, starting with people, young humans that, just came out of the womb, basically. Yeah. They can't tell you what's wrong, why they're crying, why they, have 103 fever, what hurts, all that stuff. I mean, and, she talked about the myth of balance. Everybody talks work-life balance. I just believe it's life. It's dynamic, whether it's work, home, family, whatever it is. Priority shift, and, it's trade-offs and all that good stuff. I did like Kids as your toughest performance review. Mm-hmm. Kids will call you out instantly and ignore your corporate tone and test your patience daily.
And they do it in Target or Walmart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think she said there's no 360-degree review is more honest than your child at bedtime.
That's about right.
Another thing, I'm a big believer in presence, and, with all the distractions, and we have, a little device that fits in our hand now that has more computing, hundreds times more computing power than what sent Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the moon in 1969 at our fingertips, and it's all dopamine hits with all the social media. So being present and giving that to someone is the greatest gift you can. In my opinion, and I think that's so true whether you're a leader at work, a parent, a friend, a family member. So I love that about her. Joe, what did you take out of the conversation with Kori?
It was a very interesting interview, and like I think you said, it's one of the more different interviews that we've had. She comes from an education background, academic background, and taught in schools for a while. Taught art class by standing on tables. She'd stand on tables, walk.
Yes, that was funny.
Isn't that great? So she definitely had an interesting view on the education system and on teaching and on parenting. And I think just from the title of the book, that the business of parenting says that a lot of that should flow into your work life also. Your work life should flow into your private life and your family life. Maybe we're doing it wrong whenever we say that we need to keep those separate. Maybe that's not it, because, maybe the lesson is, no, they are the same. Let's stop fighting that. Let's see if you can learn lessons in the boardroom, maybe you can apply those lessons at the dinner table. It'd be kind of interesting. She said that children need to know how to suffer because life isn't fair. It's guess what? Suck it up, Buttercup. Life is not fair. Life will not be fair. It isn't even going to be as fair out there in the world as it is here at the dinner table.
Right.
Right? So don't think that I'm being mean to you right now. I'm telling you that life is going to be that way. You're going to have a boss. You're going to work for a corporation. You're going to earn an income. You're going to have an encounter with something out there in life that is not going to be fair, and the sooner you can learn that, the better off you are. I think one of the funniest things that she put out there was when you asked her about her experiences writing a book, which I've got a little bit of experience in writing and book publishing too. She said that she called it verbal vomit.
Right. Yeah.
I'd heard the term diarrhea of the mouth before, but I think the concept is you are thinking so fast that you're thinking faster than you can type. And that's why a lot of people will dictate their first book, because they've got to get it out somehow. And that's how she wrote the book. An interesting book. I haven't read it. It's only 98 pages, so it's just my size of a book to read. I think she's got a great future ahead of her, depending on where she ends up going with all of this. It's a great interview.
Yeah. Joe, we're recording this on a Friday. What's going on over the weekend for you?
I got a joke for you.
All right.
And I'll just flat out tell you, it's a joke, so look for the punchline. And it's an engineering joke. Okay, so you got to
keep building on that, Joe.
You got to put on your engineering hat. So some engineers are trying to figure out the height of a flagpole. Got a flagpole there, how tall is it? But the problem is all they have is measuring tape, and they can't lay the measuring tape along the flagpole to figure out how tall it is. So a mathematician comes along and says, "What are you doing?" And they explain to him. The mathematician says, "Well, that's easy." So he pulls the flagpole out of the ground, lays it down on the ground and measures it. And after the mathematician's left, one of the engineers looks at him and says, "Well, that's typical. What we need is the height, and he just gave us the length."
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.